What is going on, camp believers and high performers? Welcome to another episode of the Can't Believe I Made It podcast. I am your esteemed host, your high performance mentor, dietitian, and Latino entrepreneur, Desi Abedo. What's good, people? Oh my gosh, I today's a special episode. I kind of alluded to what I wanted to talk about today, and with it being 2022 and some changes coming about, I just figured that this might be a really good opportunity to get real vulnerable, and maybe create a project that possibly can live on for latter days, if you will. And so, in so many ways, I was trying to think about and getting geared up for this pod, and I knew, and we'll kind of get into why this is going to be a vulnerable project for me. Any of this really has been vulnerable, and I think as listeners, you probably already know what the story is, right? Coming up to this, and now that we're at episode 77, I mean, we're gearing more toward episode 100, and I think in my head I was like, all right, I'm going to find a way to try to get to episode 100, then I'll decide what to do from there. I got to be honest with you all as listeners. I love fucking doing this. I love it. It is so fun. It challenges me. I get to talk to amazing people. I get to teach. I get to educate. I get to mentor. It like serves all the purposes. And so with 2022 obviously underway, I'm really excited about what this year is going to present, and I hope that you have the same excitement. Maybe that there's a lot of uncertainty, which I think is really normal, but I hope that in the uncertainty you're finding that there is some comfort in the challenge of rising to whatever occasion is coming up in your life, and really pushing you to be the hero in your own hero's journey. Trying to create that main character energy that I've been motivating and mentoring you to do, but at the same time, like as a listener right now, you kind of know, you have untapped potential within you, and you have so much potential within you that really phenomenal things can happen if you truly start to prioritize yourself. And that's really what this podcast is about. So I figured, as a gift to you all, to myself, to who I'm going to introduce here in a bit, I felt like this would be really cool. Each and every year I write myself this phenomenal New Year's letter. My therapist, and I've probably told the story on the pod, I'm going to tell it again. But if you've already heard it, you can fast forward. um, about 8 years ago, I had started, ongoing therapy. Before that, I had seen someone at 18 trying to figure out just life stuff. My parents had just gotten divorced. It was like, I wasn't doing well, or just kind of stuff like that. It was really intermittent, nothing really consistent. But 8 years ago, my therapist had challenged me to do this New Year's letter assignment, and the whole prompt behind it is towards the end of the new year. The goal is to write yourself a letter as if you were from the future a year from now. So when this gets launched, it'll be Saturday the 15th of January. So essentially, what it would be, me writing myself a letter from January 15th of 2023, really congratulating myself on all the things that I accomplished and all the things that I was intentional about. And really, in a lot of ways, it's what I have a lot of my clients do each and every year, so that we can gain some clarity. Because on my side, that's where I get to create the playbook, right? We get to look at what the person wants to be intentional about, and then we can reverse engineer back. And that's what like really gets me excited about the type of work that I do with a lot of the clients that I have right now. And I've been doing the same thing. And in a lot of ways, not only as a dietitian and a performance mentor, I'm always testing things out. And this is one thing that I've tested out, and it's tried and true. And the whole reason why I'm telling you about this is because this year, um, I've gotten away from strict outcomes like financial goals. I've gotten away from follower goals, right? Subscription goals. I've gotten away from that, and it's really seen an evolution of being more intentional. And so with today, I figured that it would kind of tap into intentionality behind like what I'm working on, just so that you all can, because I'm in the trenches with you. I think that's where I just need to be very, very transparent. I am not perfect. I have my struggles. I have my vices. I do not interact with uncomfortable feelings well at sometimes, and it's my responsibility, my radical responsibility, to be in my body, to be in my mind, and to show up in all places of my life as the healthiest, happiest, and truly highest self. right? And that's my radical responsibility. Okay, so I say all of this, and I kind of mentioned this. So if you hadn't seen it, you're hearing this for the first time. And if I had a soundboard, I would throw a huge crowd noise behind. Uh, but the cool thing about this year is my wife and I are going to be having a little baby boy at the end of June. And in so many ways, I honestly wasn't prepared for it. I really wasn't. It was definitely planned. It wasn't a surprise like our first one. This one was definitely planned, and even though it was planned in a lot of ways, I like to think of 2021 as a real year of really hard intentional growth. But another thing that came out of it too, and all of the pain and all of like, I mean, I don't want to call it disappointment because the things that happened in last year needed to happen, right? I changed my business model. I really started going in on projects like this. I really started seeing the fruit of that labor in the long term and not just the short term, right? And so after all of those changes, with what I deemed at the end of the year, like, damn, like in how many ways did I fail? Like, how many ways did I try to create feedback here? Like, shit, one of the phenomenal things that came from it through all the pain and through all the inner work was showing up as my healthiest self. And what that did for us in our marriage was it was so tremendous because a little life was brought out of it. And that's really the truest abundance to me. Because I didn't meet certain goals that I thought I wanted to meet, and like I said, I think I've changed it from really strict, hard goals and reverse engineering back, and a little bit more towards intentions. What would be a huge joy for me to look at the end of the year and be like, you know what, like you did a phenomenal job at being intentional about those things, and you created systems and habits and rituals in the same way that you teach your clients, same way that you teach podcast listeners, and anyone who is a part of this beautiful community. you know you're able to do that, and that feels good. So one of the things that came out of 2021 was obviously this beautiful life that we were able to create. And I grew up the oldest of five. There's four boys, and then my little sister Marisa. Shout out to you, Mies. um and my brothers, obviously. What up, guys? uh but there's five of us, and I think one of the things that I grew up hearing, like, more often than not, was always my mom saying, hey, you're gonna have all girls so that God can teach you patience. So in my mind, I was like, I am for sure gonna have a girl. Like, I'm gonna be a girl dad. I'm gonna be like Kobe, right? There isn't a boy in the cards for me. And when I found out, like, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, and I just want permission from you all to get real vulnerable and emotional, because I've talked about a little bit about my child and a little bit about my parents. And um, while they did the best that they could, there's a lot of things that was really hard about the way that we grew up. And I'm so thankful for the bond that we all have because of it. But for me, being a dad, like, my first thought about it is, I think about my dad, phenomenal person, loving, um, intelligent, smart, pretty much grew up in the hood. Um, did the best that he could, and he got us out of that environment. And I think for so many reasons, like, he's one of my biggest heroes. And because he's one of my biggest heroes, that's also acknowledging that he wasn't perfect, and a lot of the imperfections comes a lot of the pain, right? And I think being a dad to a little boy brings up a lot of that stuff for me. So in a lot of ways, this is going to be really great. I'm scared. I think that's normal though, right? Like, you have a life, and and you want to teach them how to be good people, right? And how to love people, and how to love what they do, and all of these things. So I figured it would be a real cool episode today, kind of doing things a little bit outside the box. But I think as listeners, you've come to find that I do that. uh, Straight up, I have ADHD, so I'm just trying to hit you from all the different angles that my mind goes, to be honest. But I figured today would be a really cool project, and this is something that my son can listen to. When he's of age, possibly a teenager or something like that, we can point back to this. So, as listeners, I want you to allow me permission to be real vulnerable here. I'm going to be speaking to my son right now, and you all get to listen. And I think there's a lot of life lessons in here that we can all really resonate with, and things that you can't. Just you're just sitting back and you're getting to listen right now. So, I'm going to be from this point on. I'm going to be referring to my son. I'm going to be talking to my son, just like as if we were having a conversation. And I think it's perfect timing. And getting geared up for this podcast was really hard because it's vulnerable. Vulnerability is hard. So yeah, this will be good though. You'll be healing, and that's what I'm sure a lot of you as listeners are doing some sort of healing. If it's imposter syndrome, health, business, relationships, any of that. I mean, if you are someone who has felt pain, and we all have, you understand the value of working through that in a healthier way. So, fuck, let's do this. All right, my guy. As you listen to this, you were probably going to be. I mean, I would guess you're a teenager by this point. I would guess because your mom is not gonna. Your mom's not gonna let you listen to this as a young kid. Um, your daddy has a potty mouth, so there's that. Okay. Look, man, I'm super excited. I am recording this obviously in 2022, the year that you were born, which is nuts. And I felt like this would be a special project. I'm going to introduce other people that are going to be a big part of your life too, and they're big parts of my life. Mainly your uncles, your auntie, and your aunties, and your nana and your papa. Those are going to be pretty big people in your life, and I'm so thankful for them. And I figured this would be a really cool project, just to give to you at some point. And obviously, you're listening to this in from a podcast because the people that listen to your daddy. I'm super thankful for them. I don't know sometimes why they do, but that's daddy's shit. Like he needs to continue to work on that. um, but yeah, so let's get into this. All right, so here are the big life lessons that I wanted to make sure that I passed on to you. Being a dad to a little boy, I felt like is to you it's different. Obviously your older sister, who was like my first chance at just being a better version of myself. I think you've probably come to figure out by now, like your older sister is very fiery. She knows what she wants. Um, and she's also incredibly loving, incredibly passionate, incredibly, empathic. And so you're obviously by now knowing her in that way. And so, with your older sister, I got to make some of the mistakes that I didn't know that I needed to make and try to figure out how to show up in a healthier way. And so for me, I really wanted to pass on, 5 life lessons, if you will, that I think would really, really resonate with us as a family, and then also things that I think would really help you to become your healthiest, highest, and happiest self. So let's go ahead and get into that. All right. So life lesson number 1: love is found in your culture. Chase the answers, chase connection with reckless abandon. What do I mean by that? So as Latinos, one of the things, obviously you are going to be entering this world as a mixed race child, right? And so and that comes with complications, just like anything else in this world. So one of the things, son, that I thought that I didn't know that I needed, because I came from parents and also grandparents who did not want to speak Spanish because they didn't want to be prejudiced against. They wanted to set kids up and then kids beyond them up enough to act right, to look normal, right? To not stir the pot too much, not to not be seen really, but just to act normal, right? And in so many ways, because of that, what has been kind of passed down to me is this like constant struggle of really wanting to be fluent in Spanish. We didn't get taught Spanish, and that's honestly a huge source of shame for me to this day. I mean, your dad has phenomenal friends, and they mean well. Like other Latino friends that make fun of me for not speaking Spanish fluently, and it's all out of fun. And there's also a source of pain and shame in that because I know why we weren't taught Spanish. I know why we needed to, in a lot of ways, be colonized to where we are. Like I understand that now at 36. I did not understand that growing up. And I was just in a therapy session last month, and your dad's therapist is amazing, and I think it's such a beautiful match because what I found out pretty early on last year, or the last 2 years rather, and especially in 2020, was that like I needed to find someone to work with that was someone of color and someone who understood my culture. I just really needed someone to understand that. And what was really great about finding him is, um, he's a black man that also is fluent in Spanish, and so we get to go back and forth and stuff like that. And I think it's such a tremendous opportunity. But one of the things that he said to me was, Des, you've been talking about really trying to get your Spanish back because for I would say probably I studied Spanish in college, and then probably for about a 4 year span, I was in the environment of Spanish speakers, right? So whether that was as a community health nutritionist and then working on the major league and minor league baseball level, like there's a bunch of Latinos there that do not speak any English. So I got repetition and I felt really good. But conversation wise, like I always really struggled, and it was such a source of shame for me. So I never continued it. And now that your dad is out of baseball, I haven't spoken Spanish in quite some time, and I struggle with it now. And what my therapist was talking to me about, about a month ago was, your heart song is in your culture. Your heart song is in your ability to truly connect with where you came from and who you surround yourself with and what that means for you to be able to speak Spanish and to be involved in that community and in that environment. And I think one of the things that your dad really wants to be much more intentional about is teaching you just that, teaching you about not only just my culture, but your mom's culture as well. And I think if we're trying to really push you to be a well-rounded individual and one that is understanding of all differences and loving of all differences, it starts in the home. So for you, I really want to push you to find meaning in your culture and in your environment and to find understanding with what that means. All right, so that's my life lesson number one. Life lesson number two: um, accept the ups and downs of your emotions. I'm going to do my best to model that for you. It was funny. Your mom and I, about 2 weeks ago. No, it was more than that. It was like a month ago. Jeez, a lot of stuff happened last month. We were looking through, just kind of messing around with like astrological signs. And to be honest, like I'm not someone who is really high on that. Like I think it's all really interesting. I love space. I love quantum physics. I think it's such an amazing science. But that's like to the extent to which I like throw myself into that. But it was interesting because your mom and I were looking through our astrological signs, and for me, having December 30th birthday, I'm a Capricorn. So we were going through like what those traits are. And we found that like we didn't none of them matched. And so that kind of pushed us to like go through a little bit more understanding, like what the heck does that mean? And it was honestly just a really good conversation starter, but it but it kind of pushed me. We have a mutual friend who is an astrologer, and so like, you know what? She can read my chart, like whatever. I'll sit down, I'll listen. It was really interesting because a lot of the feedback that she gave with your sister is pretty spot on. She's a fiery individual, knows what she wants, um, very empathic, like all the things that your older sister is, which I thought was really interesting. And then she tapped into you and she said, your boy is going to help you to feel. He's going to help you to get vulnerable. And right away, I'm like, how much more feeling and vulnerability like do I need to get into? Like your sister has already helped me with, your mom already helps me with, like I don't want to do more work. And it scares the crap out of me because I'm like, oh my God, like like last year is a prime example. Like last year was a lot of pain and a lot of inner self work, pushing through self doubt, pushing through imposter syndrome, like really creating opportunities to show up as a better individual. How much more do I need to learn? And so it kind of prompted me to start thinking about things a bit differently, because I'm going to be honest with you, like I'm scared. Like what does that even mean? Like I've already felt my emotions. I'm working through a lot of healing. Like come on, like for real, like more. But you know, your sister did something really fantastic for me. She helped me to like understand the like, hey, how you interact with things like really matters, because you're modeling things for me. You're modeling things, uh, showing me like what a healthy relationship looks like between you and your in your marriage, right? And so like in a lot of ways, she helped me to do that, and she's solely responsible for what I'm doing as you listen to this, right? As listeners, podcast listeners, podcast family, like friends. My daughter is widely responsible, as well as my wife, for where I am today, because like I personally needed, and this is also to say too, like anyone who chooses not have kids, hey, to each their own, 100%. If you find fulfillment and happiness in whatever you're doing, by all means, do it. It's going to be a whole lot easier to travel without kids anyway. So I'm with you. So um, but one of the things that I needed was like I needed something to kind of like back against the wall. Like I just kind of needed that like really classic hero's journey thing, if you will. And so stepping into this, like I know that having a little boy is going to challenge me in a lot of ways, in a lot of really good ways. And so like I am more than willing to step up to the occasion, but I'm also really scared. But this kind of points back to this life lesson number two, where I'm really encouraging you to accept the ups and downs of your emotions, because some of the emotions that are going to come up for you are going to be really, especially at a young age. Like that's something that I really want to be intentional about, is helping you to sit with your emotions and calming your little nervous system, because that's not something that I necessarily got when I was young. And because there are so many things happening at such a young age, I have found it really hard to do that as an adult, right? To work through when I'm triggered and something's happening, to work through in a healthier way. And so I'm still learning that. And it's very likely that as you listen to this, I'm still going to be learning it, at the age of 45 to 50 or whatever. Wow, that's a crazy thought to think about, by the way. Anyway, um, yeah, so I'm going to do my best to model that for you. And that's going to be hard, and I wholly understand that. And in so many ways I want to make sure that anything that I do, um, is pushing you and your sister to think about, you literally can do anything that you put your mind to. You have to learn skills to help you with your emotions, because they're normal. Your mom is going to tell you that shit all the time. um, but how to do that in a healthier way, because I was not necessarily taught that, and I'm still working through that. So I want to make sure that I model that for you. All right, life lesson number three. And this is kind of like something that I've come to. I mean, it's kind of come in phases, but um, spirituality is whatever you make of it. Please ask questions and seek answers. Your dad grew up in like the the Christian church. We very much, in an inner city, more like Latino community in Albuquerque, we grew up in Catholicism, and then when we moved, we sort of advanced that into Christianity. And the church itself, from a community perspective, was really healing for us, coming from a family who is trying to do the best that they can, but you know long years and long generations of trauma. Like, we're just trying to do the best that we can. So in so many ways, the community aspect was really helpful. But there are a lot of things that necessarily now, as an adult, that I don't agree with. I think where we learned, there was a lot of white supremacy. There was a lot of discomfort with things that are new, right? Things that are different. And and now as an adult, I don't agree with what I was necessarily taught. And it's caused me to kind of have an evolution of how I view spirituality. And now as I sit here like at 36, like part of my spirituality is being present in my body, like the times of meditation, times of moving my body, times of intentionality behind times with me and your mom, or times with me and your sister, or times with family, right? And I think in so many ways, healthy connection and love has become my spirituality, because it sort of envelopes all the things that I just talked about. And so for you, I want to make sure that if you have answers, or if you have questions rather, that you are seeking those answers. And it's okay to ask questions, and it's okay to really not know, you know, what a higher being is, or what that means, or anything. I think your mom and I are going to do a really effective job of trying to get you to answer those questions for yourself, because I want to make sure I don't put anything on you. I want to give you an opportunity to show up in whichever way you want to do that. And I feel like that's okay. You don't have to have all the answers, but I will encourage you to continue to seek them, because spirituality is a really large part of my life. It's a really large part of your mom's life, and it will at some point become a huge part of your sister's life if she chooses to do that. And it's kind of the same thing with you. Find solace in asking these questions, and find solace in really not maybe not having the answer, but having a belief system that like really really helps you, right? And as pod listeners, I would say the same thing. Find some things that can truly help you to feel connected, because those that are more connected in a healthy way also have healthier patterns. We know that through science. Okay, so that's lesson number 3. Lesson number 4: compete, and then go compete again. All right, let your only competition be yourself. Yesterday, this was a really hard thing for me to learn. I've said this on numerous pods, but like I play basketball every single day. It's a form of my movement, it's a form of my self-care, and it's honestly my mindfulness practice, because my negative self-talk started at a very young age, obviously through a lot of um, hard things that I went through as a kid. But I started to direct that towards something's wrong with me at a very young age, and it started with basketball. I didn't have a good game, or we lost. Like I really took that to heart. And at 7 years old, like no 7-year old kid should be saying to themselves like, you suck, or you're trash, or whatever. And those are things that I constantly would do. And it's when I play basketball, it is that mindfulness exercise, but it is a little bit more of, how am I going to interact if I'm playing and I'm not playing well? My knee jerk reaction is to attack myself. There's something inherently wrong with you. Like, don't, like, stop doing what you're doing. But if I'm being more intentional about being in my body, and being in uncomfortable feelings, it's becoming more curious. Okay. And so I feel like competition for you is going to help you to become curious. It's going to help you to not only feel like it's okay to go out and compete against others, but the real competition is going to be with yourself, because you're going to lose a lot of time if you're comparing yourself to others. Because in so many ways, and I'm going through this right now. I can't compare my chapter 1 to someone else's chapter freaking 30, right? And right now at 36, like, really transparently, your dad is really struggling with feeling like he's behind, feeling like he wants all these projects to hit at the same time, and that's really really hard for him. As I say this out loud to you, I also want to make sure, like, hey, as I say it out loud, it's also an opportunity for me to be curious about, like, okay, whose expectations am I trying to fulfill right now? Are they mine, and are they realistic? And who am I comparing myself to? And so for you, I do want you to fall in love with competition. You're stepping into a family of athletes that all compete against one another and are more than willing to wrestle and throw hands if someone loses. I say this jokingly, okay? We have not fought in a really long time. I'm talking about your Uncle Ant, your Uncle Dave, your Uncle Nico, and then obviously your Auntie Mies. But now that you also get to learn about your Uncle Kev too, and your Gigi and your GT on your mom's side, all athletes. So I know competition is going to be something that that you're going to get that opportunity to go through, and I'm excited about it. And at the same time, I want to help you to understand that in this competition, fall in love with what it's teaching you. Be curious about moments that are not going well for you. And this is just in life. Be curious. And I'm going to continue to try to model that, because if I can model to you how to be curious about your behavior and non-judgmental, you're going to show up as a healthier version of yourself in anything that you do in your future career, as a student, as a son, as a brother, uh, at some point, as if you choose to be in a relationship, um, as a husband, or whatever that is. I want to push you to compete with yourself, to compete with others, but truly to be curious about what that brings up for you. Because the negative self-talk and all the self-doubt and all the imposter syndrome, it's all really normal stuff. And at the same time, at a very young age, if you're starting to think about your behavior in a more curious way, you're going to be successful. Okay. All right, cool. Lesson number 5. Your parents are going to do their best. Forgive them for their shortcomings, and w- we're going to do our best. I think your dad has really grown to really, really appreciate and love his parents, and also appreciate their parents, because it's been an ongoing line of just generational trauma. And something that's been really, really important for me starting off is breaking that chain. Like that's my life's work. It's important to me. It's why I get up. Like it's why I do these projects, because not only do I want to show up as the hero in my hero's journey, but I also want to help others to do that same thing. Because past generations, like, we've all tried to do our best with what we had. And where we are right now in 2022, there's a big call for stepping up and understanding that mental health advocacy is important, and stepping up and really understanding that habits and rituals are also really important, and then also holding space for some of the ways in which people disconnect, whether that is through work, through substance abuse, through sex, or whatever. It's just all the things. There's mental health needs to be on the top of all of our minds, and really prioritizing that, and prioritizing healthy human connection, and connection to healthy patterns, right? Healthy rituals, healthy things. You've heard me say that before as a pod fam. This is all on habits and rituals. It always is. Okay. So for you, I want to make sure, son, that you understand that your parents are going to do their best. It is our job to model healthy communication, healthy conflict, um, how to deal with uncertainty. There's a lot of that, and that's not going to change. Um, there's just so much that comes from this, and for me, I'm just so thankful for the opportunity to be able to do this. I didn't really know, and I don't know, honestly, before you're here, like, what really to expect. But some of the feedback that I've gotten, whether that's through family or just having conversations with others, is that this is going to challenge you, and that's okay. I'm I'm up for the challenge, and I'm really, really excited about it. So I'm excited to have you in this world. Um, it's gonna be hot as hell when you get here. You're stepping in summer in Tucson, Arizona, where it's freaking 115 out. Um, I don't really know if we'll stay here for a lot of your livelihood. Got to be honest with you. Your dad wants to experience something. He's lived here like his whole life. Your mom really loves it here, though. So we'll have to see. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of close out, and then go back to talking to our pod fam and pod friends of the pod here. But I'm super excited to have you in this world, my man. It's gonna bring up a lot for me, and Dad's gonna have to do a really, really, really good job of being okay with the feelings, and modeling all the things that I just provided for you in all of these lessons. So I'm excited for it, and I'm up for the challenge. I'm 100% up for the challenge because I'm invested in breaking these bonds and breaking these generational bonds. So yeah, all right. So as a pod fam, I appreciate you all. If you've listened up to this point, it means you're emotionally invested. So I just want to thank you for listening up to this point. And even if you didn't, that's entirely okay. Maybe if this wasn't your cup of tea, that's cool too. That's why we do different types of content here, and making sure that we're tackling things from just other angles. And I know that part is really important to me as well. So, um, as always, as you're listening to this, I'm going to give you homework. Like, you already know that as your mentor and coach, I'm giving you homework. So if something spoke to you here, please feel free, screenshot it. Let me know something that really resonated with you, something that possibly you're being intentional about with your kids, or possibly with future kids that you want, or maybe just in your life. If I didn't mention something, feel free to add it. So make sure that you tag myself at Desi Abeda or at I Made It Pod, just so that we can repost and engage with the community. And stepping into 2022, I love what I'm doing with you all. I truly do. So, thank you to, I think we got like 40 ongoing listeners right now. So that is exciting. That is exciting. I get 40 of you to just chat with in my office, um, with my all the things that I have in here. So I love you all. I'll catch you on the next one with the Mentorship Monday coming up here. Like I said, thank you so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.